There are two major categories of cells. We're going to start with the earliest cells to come into existence. These are the prokaryotes. Remember that prefix that we learned earlier in the semester, pro. Pro means first. So the prokaryotes were the first cells. Prokaryotic cells were the first cells to come into existence. If you're interested in how that happened, please pause the video and call me over and I'll talk to you about how Earth's first atmosphere was and how these first chemical molecules could come together. But since prokaryotes were the very first cells, that means that they are the simplest cells. They're very primitive and they're very small. They don't have a lot of bits and pieces to them. That's why we're going to study them first. There are two major groups of prokaryotes. They're known as the Archaebacteria. The prefix archae meaning old or ancient. So these were the very first bacteria to come into existence. And then you have Eubacteria, which are the true bacteria. They are the newer evolved, and you can find them everywhere. Prokaryotic cells are the most abundant cells on the planet because all prokaryotes are unicellular, meaning the entire existence of the organism is in one cell. That one cell has to do everything that it needs to make that organism survive. And they can be found everywhere on the planet, from the deep ocean to the frozen tundras to inside you. So of those two groups, the Archaebacteria are sort of a weird group because they live in really inhospitable places, places where you wouldn't expect to find any living things at all, like the deep sulfur vents in the deep ocean where the acidity level is incredibly high and the temperature is incredibly high. You will find Archaebacteria living there. Inside of volcanoes where the temperature melts rock, you will find Archaebacteria living there. The Eubacteria are the ones that people think of when you think the word bacteria. They're the ones that are in your probiotics. So when you eat yogurt, you're eating Eubacteria. You have Eubacteria inside of you that helps you digest food. And it's also the bacteria that makes us sick, like gives us the common cold and stuff like that. Prokaryotes are very simple. They pretty much just have things listed on this page. Now, the important thing to know is that all cells that exist have all of these things, but some have more than just these four listed. But prokaryotes pretty much have this and nothing else because they're so simple. Okay, so make sure you know all cells have these items, but prokaryotes only have these items, nothing else. Okay? So all cells have some sort of genetic material, such as DNA. Now, it's a little bit different between the two cell types. The one we're studying today, prokaryotes, they have one large strand of DNA that hooks up in a ring. So it's a single circular DNA. Now, the next type of cell we're going to learn about starting tomorrow, the eukaryotes, they have what's called a double helix, and they have lots of little pieces of DNA. All cells have cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is this thick, jelly-like substance that fills up the cell's interior. It's mostly made of water, and it keeps all the little bits and pieces inside floating and bumping and keeps them from bumping into each other. So it's very thick, it's very viscous, which means that it's very thick. It's not watery, it's like jello. Next, every single cell has a plasma membrane. This is kind of like the skin of the cell. It determines what is the cell and what is not the cell, and it determines what gets to go inside and what gets to go outside the cell. The plasma membrane goes by lots of different names: the plasma membrane, the cell membrane, and the phospholipid bilayer. Lots of names, exact same thing that we're talking about. The other thing that all cells have are ribosomes. We're going to learn more about ribosomes coming up soon, but the most important thing about a ribosome is that it builds proteins, okay? A little bit of review. What are proteins made of? Hopefully you said amino acids. Proteins are made of amino acids, okay? So every cell in existence has these four things: genetic material, cytoplasm, plasma membrane, or ribosomes. But prokaryotes only have genetic material, cytoplasm, plasma membrane, and ribosomes as their main pieces. There's a few little extra things that they have, but these are the most important ones. So how can you tell the difference between a prokaryote and the other types of cells we're going to learn about, the eukaryotes? When you look at them under a microscope, they do not have a nucleus. So that dark center, they don't have one. They do not have a nucleus. They also don't have all the other little bits and pieces that cells have. Okay? All the little bits and pieces inside of cells are going to be called organelles, which means little organs, because they're like the little organs that keep the cell running, just like your organs keep your body running. Okay? But prokaryotes do not have a nucleus. That is the most important thing to remember about a prokaryote. They came first, they're simple, and they do not have a nucleus. Prokaryotic cells have a couple of different ways to help them to move around. Some have nothing. They have no way of moving around. They just have to hope that they get caught up in an airstream or in a water current or by people pushing them around. But some can actually move themselves. One organelle that is used for movement is called a flagellum. A flagellum is a long, whip-like tail that it can whip back and forth to help it swim or move through the air. Some can use what's called cilia. Cilia are short, hair-like projections on the outside of cells that they can move in a wave-like fashion to help them swim. Okay? But all prokaryotes are unicellular. All prokaryotes are unicellular. All prokaryotes are bacteria. Okay? That's the only group of organisms that belong to the prokaryotes, bacteria. So here's a generalized prokaryotic picture for you. You can see that they're very simple. They don't have a lot of things inside of them. Okay? So what's the most important takeaway from this? Prokaryotes came first. They're very simple. All prokaryotes are unicellular. All prokaryotes are bacteria. No nucleus.